Right, okay. Everybody, welcome to XLR. Today we have the Japanese Grand Prix of Tier 2, penultimate round of the season, taking place at the Suzuka circuit in, of course, Japan. As it's a little bit overcast here on the circuit. We may see some rain. I'm not sure if we're going to be getting any or not, but Mr. Business is going to be one of the first out onto the circuit, but he has been beaten out by an AlphaTauri of Hearts, that is, just exiting the pit lane. Apparently it's not forecast for rain. It's rather overcast, but apparently we're not going to see those clouds forming into water droplets. I'm just going to turn my audio up just a little bit so you can hear the game a little bit more. But as Haas just takes us through that first sector, he's going into the two Degners of turns 8 and 9. And Great Pup just joining the session. And Archie just taking us towards that spoon curve at the moment, and then a lot of this stuff I feel like I'm repeating myself as as it's kind of what I said in, just last week, last time we raced at Suzuka. But that was for a different tier. So that was tier 1. As around the final corner comes Hearts, and off he goes to begin his flying lap. So he takes us through those first couple of corners, gets back on the power again, right up to the curb on the outside, but not crossing over those white lines. So he takes us through this S section, so technical, just a little bit off the racing line, can see you lose a lot of time, as he's now heading up the hill towards the end of the first sector. Through the Degner curves, quite easy to invalidate just on that exit curb. As into the hairpin of 11 he goes, gets back on the power. And then it's to the right and in towards Spoon Curve. Flicks to the left, through Spoon. Now in the second part of the corner, getting back around it again before he's back on the power. And in towards 130 he goes. He goes blasting up to a top speed, exceeding 300 kilometers an hour. Up to about 318 before he takes it to the left of Spoon and stays on the not Spoon 130R, keeping flat out the entire time, but you still do lose a little bit of time just from turning. But he comes around the final corner now, and he's going to open that DRS flap, and it's a 129.3 as the first time. Mr. Business behind him does a 127.8, foot face 128.6, not able to match that time of the Mercedes driver. Around the final corner comes EJ as well. He goes into P3 with a 28.8, unable to beat the time of Footface. Around the final corner comes Rolling Dice, who can only manage a 129.9. Admittedly, that was on the medium compound, but still not a particularly great lap from him. Around the final corner comes Great Pup. He's just beginning his first run. Then we have Dom into that final chicane. He's also got a McLaren right behind him of Jay-Z, but he's only just beginning a run, so that shouldn't matter too much. Dom jumps up into P2 with a 128.3. Jay-Z getting a big old toe from the Williams driver. Clive jumps himself up into P5 with a 129.2. Howard Gamer just starting his first run with a 145 as a little benchmark there for him. Around the final corner comes Perkins. I think she's going to be doing the same. And then it's Max, who also appears to be doing a little warm-up run. So around the final corner comes Jamie Cash, and he is doing the same as well. All these drivers choosing to go for 2 runs on this track. I'm not sure how bad the tyre wear is, whether the tyres will drop off after 1 lap here. But evidently it's not too bad if they're choosing to all go for multiple runs. Hart is out of fuel and is having to limp back to the pits. Yeah, I think we're just going to see an awful lot of drivers into the pit lane. Footface is just beginning his 2nd run now. And then it's Great Pup around the final corner, not currently on a lap time. Round he goes through that final corner and up to the line with DRS, and it's a 128.659. Puts him into P4. Jay-Z around the final corner is hopefully going to start a flying run this time around, and he goes again, having done yet another banker run then. Have a game around the final corner, sets a competitive time, it's a 128.1, and that is provisionally, that is a P2 position, but all he does need, and all everyone needs, is to go through Jamie Cash around the final corner, closes up to the line, and it's P7 with a 128.9, which gets him through, and then it's Max just starting a run as well. Xavi around the final corner as well. Your championship leader could wrap it up today, but that would require quite a large points haul over Dan, as Frosted Cheese is sitting in the gravel there. I thought for a second he might have got himself beached, but he's just getting out of the way of some drivers. Needs to be slightly careful that he doesn't get disqualified for being stopped, because that would not be what he wants, as I don't think Footface was able to improve on that attempt. Around the final corner as well comes Mr. Cactus. Max is limping his way around the circuit in the gravel trap. War just getting a run with a 31.9 in that first sector. Can't remember how these times stacked up. Jay-Z jumps up into P7 with a 128.8. That's a lot closer to the sort of time and position you'd expect compared to that first run. And around the final corner comes Anzac Rex, who's also just going to begin his first run of the session. Around the final corner comes the Haas of Hammock Gamer just into the pit lane. And then it is Xavi who's on his flying lap. Gonna come around the final corner. Up to the line he goes with DRS. And it's only P2 with a 28.1, sorry. He's not far off at all. And that was also done on the medium compound tyre. And Dan does retire from the session. He will be starting 20th today. But he needs a strong time. He needs a strong points haul to stay in, or stay with a realistic chance of the championship. As Fresh comes around the final corner with a 127.7 to go to the top. Around the final corner comes Frosted Cheese as well. And he's just starting a run. But, Dan, it's still comfortably... there needs to be a big points haul from Xavi for Dan to be mathematically out the championship. But realistically, so just noticing Jay-Z's got a little bit of damage there. But realistically, Dan does need a strong result today to remain with a chance at the title. Obviously, anything's possible. And at the moment, it might be... he might end up missing that final race. We're not sure. We're not sure if he is or not. But if he is, then the championship is a lot wider open than it appears. Obviously, last season we had a similar matter when it was Unitos who won the title with a win in the final race. All he needed was second with the fastest lap. But again, that would have been an incredibly risky thing to go for. And he did end up winning that Grand Prix, taking the lead, I think it was on the penultimate lap, and then winning the title. As around the final corner comes Rolling Dice, jumps up into P12. And then Frosted Cheese in the Ferrari slots in behind his teammate with a 128.612. So we've seen it before of winning the title due to the absence of your rival, as Fresh also appears to have a little bit of front wing damage. Obviously, it's gonna be it's a tall order from Dan at the moment. But if he can keep the gap quite low, then, or like low enough that it's manageable, because he can't bank on Xavi not attending. Like looking at the standings, he's only 5 points clear at the moment to Xavi. So if he wins with Dan, 8th or lower, I think. Yeah, Dan 8th or lower is what Xavi needs to win the title today. But from 20th, it is the best opportunity he's got. As Perkins is a 10th up on her personal best after that first sector. I'm not sure if we have anyone else on runs at the moment. If Dan does manage to win today, or just outscore Xavi in any way, that will really make it game on in that final race. And if Xavi is unable to attend that finale in Silverstone, no, it's not Silverstone, that was in Monza. It's just around the final corner comes Liberty Clive. If Dan can outscore Xavi by a decent points haul, it will very much be to his advantage in the final race, as Perkins improves by a 10th into P10. And honestly, this title, like, after the first few rounds, it looks like it was over, and Dan was just going to run away with it. But Xavi has made a very good comeback this season, putting him in the position where with 2 rounds to go he is leading, with his rival definitely on the back foot today. As Hanzak Rex goes a little bit wide through that first through the second Degner there. I don't know why I almost said first corner, because it's very much not the first corner. As EJ's just taking us through Spoon. He's a bit out of shape, and I think he's not going to improve with that lap unless his first sector was seriously decent. Yeah, no, he's 8 tenths down now after that. I don't know if he was down or not before, but he definitely is now. Yeah, he just comes into the pits. Both Ferraris are heading out for second runs, as Zach Rex comes around the final corner. It's a 129, which does get him ahead of Hearts, but ahead of Hearts and Mr. Cactus, Max hasn't done a competitive time. He's currently 30 seconds up on his previous best, which would see him around where Anzac Rex is, but I'm sure Max has time to find through this final chicane. Around the final corner he goes, and up to the line. He can only find enough time for P18, so as it stands, Max is going to be knocked out in the first part of qualifying. Jamie Cash jumps himself up into P5 while all of that was going on. Perkins into the pit lane could be a pretty decent risk here, unless she can get herself out in time, which she should be able to, but it's probably just going to be a bit tighter than she would have liked. Footface is just beginning a run as well. While that's going on, Jay-Z heading into Spoon Curve at the moment is is on a lap, although he doesn't have much battery to play with. But as he comes towards 130i, yeah, he's down in his time. He's not going to be improving. And with no ERS or fuel, I think we might be seeing the last of Jay-Z in this session. But in P8, he should be good enough for him to get through into Q2. Just a few drivers on their outlaps at the moment. I don't think anyone is on a push, as Jamie Cash just files his way into the pit lane. Max not currently improving, but he should have the fuel to slow down, recharge, and then go again, as he's getting out the way of the McLaren of War there, although he is only on an outlap, so it's not the greatest of matters. As around the final corner comes the Red Bull of Rolling Dice to begin what's likely going to be his final lap of the session, unless he has to abort and go again. As Footfate has come back into the pit lane, he's not going to be improving in Q1 then, so 8th is the best that the Ferrari driver can do. Frosted Cheese is not pushing on this attempt. He's probably going to be recharging, saving a bit of tyres, and then going again with some slightly nicer track conditions in about half a minute's time. Who do we have on a lap at the moment? We've got EJ snaking us through that first sector, but War hasn't invalidated his time, and we could be seeing the last of him in this session, unless he can get further around the lap in a decent amount of time. Same with Perkins, who's not currently on a flying lap. She's only got a minute left in the session to make it to that final corner, but she might be okay. Mr. Cactus currently on a lap. So is Rolling Dice, who's heading in towards that 130R left-hander at the moment. Yeah, he's 6/10 up on his previous best. He needs about 6/10 to be securely into Q2. That would see him to just about around the edge of that top 10 as he comes around the final corner. He's going to open his DRS, get a little bit of a tow from the Alfa Romeo, and up to the line he goes into P9, and that should be him safely through into Q2. Jay-Z retires from the session in P6. That should be safely enough for him. Perkins and War are going to comfortably make it round. Oh no, she's not, because Perkins has taken a little bit too much curb at the final corner. That's the last we're going to see of her in this Q1 session. And Max hasn't validated his time at the final corner. He improved by 8/10 as well, but he's not going to be going through. EJ can only manage P12 in his Aston Martin, so he's going to be quite close on the edge. Hart as well can only manage P17. War and Clive are the only two drivers that can really challenge to get themselves through into Q2. But Clifty was currently just on the edge. I think he will be safe. But Clifty Clive's down on his time. He's not going to improve either. I think Perkins has got away with not being able to pull off that run. Just about, as there's a Red Bull nicely in that gravel trap there. I'm sure that's what everyone wanted to see, where everyone wanted to see the Red Bull in real life today, rather than back on pole position. As War just takes us 3-spoon curve. It doesn't matter, he is through into Q2. I mean, he is 6/10 up on his time. That would be nice for him, just to give a bit of confidence with this run. Would again see him to around a 0.6, which is that sort of edge of the top 10, maybe lower top 5 or upper top 15. As around the final corner he goes, he even managed to get himself up into P7, and that is him very safely through into the second part of qualifying. Rolling Dice goes up to the line, and that is all we'll see of him, as Max is just going around the final couple of corners as well. He will be knocked out in Q1, along with Anzac Rex, Hart, Mr. Cactus, and then Dan starting last. So, Q1 topped by Fresh, followed by Mr. Business and Shabby. They're followed by Havoc Gamer with a strong performance in P4 again. Then it's Jammy Cash, Jay-Z and War, followed by Dom, Footface, Rolling Dice, Frosted Cheese, Grape Pup, EJ Perkins getting through despite not doing that final run, Glivity Clive, Anzac Rex, Hearts, Max, Mr. Cactus, and then Dan. Right, Q2 will be getting underway very shortly as we just wait for the drivers to head out. I would invite Grape Up, but it doesn't show him online. First car out is the Haas car of Havoc Gamer. If I can just find where he is. The Canadian in the Haas car. Just heading out. Havoc just taking us through the S section at the moment. Yeah, he's just been overtaken by a couple of drivers, but realistically, especially for the Q, especially for qualifying and the first runs of Q2 especially, track position is not all that important. So the first Williams of Dom is going out onto the circuit. I think favourite for pole has to be either Fresh, Mr. Business or Javi. It's unsure who it will be out of that list, but I think it is a pretty safe bet to say it will be one of them. As into the bus stop chicane goes Perkins, and then she's going to get on the power, and around the final corner she goes to begin the first run of Q2. Taking us into the high-speed right of turn 1, then on the brakes for turn 2, fourth gear, back on the power again. A little bit tentative on the throttle through the first corner. Or through the second corner, possibly. Just not taking too much risk in that Alpine. Takes us to the left, up the hill of turn 6, and then it's around into the two Decners. To the right for both of them, but it's a bit too much curb, and that will not be a valid lap time. We now will look back to the War, who is on a lap time, and he is on a flying lap, and has so far kept it valid, taking us into the hairpin of turn 11. Before he gets back on the power, and he goes to the outside of the Alpine. I'm not sure why he went for that direction, but it sent him into the gravel, and that's not going to be a competitive time from War. I'm not quite sure where the Alpine was going, but then at the same time there was still that gap on the right, and then he went on that one for the left, which sent him off the circuit. But the first driver on a potentially competitive time is Jay-Z, who comes around the final corner, and he's going to go up to the line. DRS active, and it's a 29.0 as the first run of the session. He's followed by Jammy Cash, who sets a 28.6, and then have a gamer with a 28.5. Very strong time from him. Next, it's Fresh to the line, 28.0. Footface, 28.1. Also a very strong time. And then it's a Red Bull of, I believe that's just rolling dice, beginning a lap, which indeed it is. Then we got Dom into the final chicane. It's going to take us to the left. And up to the line he goes. And he goes to the top with a 128.0. Which is a very strong time, possibly on used tyres as well. Certainly wasn't expecting that when I saw Williams go up to the line, but it's a very strong time. And honestly, he wasn't feeling too confident, but he might not even have to go for a second run if that is the sort of times he's setting. Perkins, it has kept this one within the white lines. She goes around the final corner. Takes us to the left just about. Keeps it within the white lines this time on the apex of the chicane. Up to the line she goes, and it's P4 with a 128.3. Around the final corner comes EJ, just beginning another run. I don't think we have anyone on a push lap at the moment. Dom just taking us into the pit lane. He can understandably be very happy with that first attempt to put him into P1. Then Xavi coming into the final corner soon. Round the final corner comes Xavi, and off he goes. And we see whether he can get himself comfortably into Q3 as he takes us through the first sector. He did that on used tyres as well. It's crazy. It's a very good time from Dom to put him into P1. Just around the final corner comes Mr. Business. It's probably one of those laps that you do and then you feel like you're never going to match in a lifetime. As EJ puts himself onto a 131.4. It's not the greatest of times, and it probably won't be enough to see him through. He's going to need to improve that somewhere. As Perkins comes into the pit lane. Then we've got Xavi into the final corner. It's a final chicane. It's 110.6 in the first two sectors. Round the final corner he goes. He gets on the power and he takes us to the right before he opens his DRS flap. And Xavi goes to the top with a 127.3. And that will definitely be him safely through into the final part of qualifying, as Jay-Z just beginning his next attempt. So he's going to take us through that first sector. But we wait to see what sort of times Mr. Business can do. He's a 10th down on Xavi after the middle sector. It just depends how well he can get stopped for this final chicane. Turn 16 and 17, but he can't. He just takes a little bit too much curb. And that lap will not be counted to the timing sheets. He comes into the pit lane as well. So Mr. Business is going to need another lap if he wants to get himself through into Q3. And he's a couple points off the championship lead as well. And he is most definitely an outsider for the title. If he wants to become anything more than that, he really needs a strong race today. But down in P13 is not a good start. Here goes Jamie Cash beginning his next lap. Need takes us just into that first corner before we might switch perspectives over to, I think Liberty Clive is the only driver on a lap at the moment. I tell her, like Jay-Z just improved by over a second to get himself up into P2 with a 1:27.7. That should be the final run he does to get himself through into Q3. And with track improvement, those new tyres can make a big difference. So he may just have to go again, because people around him might just pull out laps. Around the final corner now comes Liberty Clive, and he jumps up into P6 with a 1:28.307, and then Jamie Cash is on a run coming into that final chicane. He's 2.5 tenths up at the moment. He needs quite a decent amount of time if he wants to get himself through into Q3. Round the final corner he goes, and up to the line, DRS active, and Jamie Cash sets a 1:28.1, which should get him through into Q3, although it just depends how much of a difference those new tyres can make on the other drivers. As they're all just starting to come out onto the circuit, I'm not sure who actually is the furthest around a flying lap. Jay-Z's going to be on his way in. There's the House of Habit Gamer, but he's not pushing. Then he's got Mr. Business behind him, who's on an outlap. I genuinely think it is Frosted Cheese, unless... Yeah, no, it is Frosted Cheese who's the furthest around a flying lap at the moment. He's a half second up through that first sector alone, so it is definitely a good improvement so far from the Ferrari driver. He's a very good qualifier, is Frosted Cheese. He's going to take us through the hairpin of turn 11, gets back on the power, and then it's the long run to the right in towards Spoon Curve. And we just have to hold our breath and wait to see what sort of times he can do. Takes us to the left of 13, into 14, back on the power, and then he's just blasting in towards that final sector. 130R is the next corner up that he's going to have to tackle. And it's dead flat in these modern Formula 1 cars. And now it's just the last 3 corners. The right, and then it's the left. And then it's back on the power and to the right again. Round the final corner he goes. And Frosted Cheese gets himself up into P2 with a 1:27.6, which should get him through to the next part of qualifying. Then we see Jamie Cash on his way into the pit lane. He's followed by an Alpine car of Perkins. She's on an outlap though. And then it's Rolling Dice also on an outlap. EJ on an outlap. Fresh on an outlap. Next driver on a flying lap, I believe, is Mr. Business, as he's heading in towards 130R at the moment. And it's a 1:10.4 after that. Those first 2 sectors from Mr. Business is looking very promising. Can he get it stopped for the chicane? Yes, he can. He keeps it within the white lines as well. Just the final corner left to tackle. And he does it nicely. Round the final corner he goes. And he goes to the top with a 1:27.0. He's followed by another gamer who jumps himself up into P3 with a 27.6, which should get him nicely through into the next part of qualifying. Foot faces into the pit lane. He will not be improving. Neither will Perkins, who's lost a front wing somewhere during that first sector. He is a tiny bit down through the first sector as well, so he's not going to be setting any improvements on this attempt, but he might be able to just back off and go again. He's got the time to do so if that is what he has to do. Just the question is, does he have the fuel? Rolling dice, half a second up on his personal best. After the middle sector, he does need an awful lot of time if he wants to see himself through. That alone would not be enough. He's got to improve through the final corner as well. And up to the line he goes. And it's 7/10, but it's not enough to get him through into the final part of qualifying. Rolling dice is knocked out in Q2. Around the final corner comes EJ, and this time he does seem to have kept it a lot cleaner through that middle sector, but it's not enough to get him off the bottom either. He's going to be P13 at the very best. War around the final corner now. Also, not got a benchmark to base off. He gets it through into P10, and I think there's not going to be any improvements behind. Rolling dice is off the track with no front wing. Perkins is off the track with no front wing, and EJ doesn't have the ERS to go for another lap. So I think that final effort from War was just about enough to get him through into the final part of qualifying, scraping through in P10 right at the end. But it's definitely looking like it's either gonna be one of this top three on pole position. But the question is, which one? Perkins making her way into the pit lane. Cliffy Clive knocked out. So is Perkins and Rolling Dice, EJ as well, and they're also joined by Great Pup, who didn't get the chance to set a time. I think Dom was the only driver to get through on one run, on his first run rather than backing off and going for another one. So it was a very strong effort from him. And a very good first attempt. I mean, that was done on a scrub set as well. So, I mean, we just have to wait and see what he can do on a fresh set. Honestly. As Rolling Dice I think he's out of fuel as well. Rolling Dice very much just taking his time back into the pit lane. Oh no, he's not out of fuel, he's just being an idiot. Yeah, no, he's very much not out of fuel. What is he doing? Oh, of course he's going into the pit. No, he's not going into the pits. Okay. Well, he's saving us a bit of time with that then. So, Q2. This time it's topped by Mr. Business, followed by Fresh and Javi. And again, they're followed by Havoc Gamer, Frosted Cheese, Jay-Z, Dom, Jammy Cash, Footface, and War. Then knocked out this time was Cliffy Clive, Perkins, Rolling Dice, EJ, and Great Pup. Right then, we are now just getting underway for this Q3 session. First driver out onto the track, I believe, is the McLaren of War. He's just exiting his garage now, and indeed he is the first one. He's followed by Footface's Ferrari, but Footface just being beaten out by Fresh and by Havoc Gamer. And War just taking us onto the circuit, and he begins his outlap. So it is really going to be all to play for in the race, particularly if we get a late safety car or something similar. If you add a late safety car and a few penalties into the mix, it can genuinely be all to play for at this circuit. It's really just unpredictable. But we have seen drivers go from last to first here before. Saw it last season in Tier 1 with a driver that has unfortunately now left the league, but he was incredibly quick when he was here. That's Ward taking us into turns 13 and 14. Yeah, he very much did. Round the final corner he goes, gets back on the power, and off goes War in towards the first corner, and he goes blasting his way down towards turn 1. It's the double right of turn 1 into turn 2 that begins the lap before he gets back on the power. And then it's the snaking S section where all can go wrong just from a tiny missed apex. You can just lose 1 tenth, 2 tenths, all just from one singular mistake. But he's all kept it neat and tidy so far as he takes us up the left-hander of 7 and up the hill in towards the 2 Degner curves of 8 and into 9. Keeps it within the white line so far. And he's all kept it cleanly through that first sector. Very easy to make a mistake around there into the hairpin of turn 11. You want a good run, but at the same time, you do want a very nice exit, as that will gain you time all the way down this straight in towards turn 13, which is the left-hander of Spoon Curve, joining in with turn 14 to make up that left-hander. Then he gets back on the barrel again for a pretty short straight, running in towards turn 15 of 130R, and then it's 16 and 17 for that final chicane. It's 111.7 after the middle sector, so it's not the greatest pace we've seen so far, but it could be a decent lap if he hooks it all together. Into the final chicane he goes, and then it's back on the power. And then it's just one flick to the right, and it's a 128.7 as the early benchmark. Then we've got Jamming Cash and Havoc Gamer right next to each other on the runs, which probably isn't helping either of them as they both come around the final corner. Havoc Gamer sets to 128.6, Jamming Cash 6 cents faster with a 28.0. Havoc could well have done that on a scrub set of tyres. Fresh sets to 127.7. And then Jay-Z can only manage a 29.3. Mr. Business with a 127.399. And then he's followed by Dom with a 27.7, narrowly just finishing ahead of Fresh after those first runs. Xavi just beginning his first run now. Championship leader, also one of the favourites for pole position. Footface invalidated his time and will have to go again. And all of that so far is pretty much the first runs of qualifying done. Though Xavi taking us through that. The S section, then up towards the left, and then it's back on the power again for him. Then it's the double right of the Deckness. It's 31.1 in the first sector for Xavi, and he's now taking us in through the right of 10, in straight to the left right-hand hairpin of turn 11, where he gets back on the power. And then he takes his car to the right of 12 in towards a spoon curve of 13 and a 14. There's a Williams just rejoining the track, but he does stay very wide and does not get in the way. There's a little bit of traffic up ahead of him. First is the Mercedes of, I believe, Jamie Cash, who tried to get out of the way and in doing so almost just moved straight back towards him. Thankfully, nothing came of that, and Javi was able to keep his foot to the floor. As he comes in towards the final corner now. And Javi's been a very clean lap so far, and it is the fastest we've seen so far, with a 1:26.881. And that is provisional pole position for... That Williams just did not take that chicane. And it is provisional pole position for the Red Bull driver. Round the final corner goes Frosted Cheese. He's just beginning a lap and Havoc Gamer just on his way in. Frosted Cheese just going through the first sector. And he's just taking us through at the moment, and then it's just to the left of turn 7, one massive continuous corner, and then it's 8, and then it's 9, keeping it within the white lines, not taking too much risk just yet, is the Ferrari driver. Then he gets it stopped and taken to the left, where he gets back on the power, and to the right he goes. And all of this is turn 12. I believe it's commonly referred to as the Parabolica for reasons you can expect, and it's just a very long corner. But Frosted Cheese taking us to the end of that first sector. It's not, or that middle sector, it's not great from the Ferrari driver, who might be able to turn it around through this final chicane. And he comes around the final corner now, and Frosted Cheese gets himself into P6 after those first runs with a 1:28.2. You also got Havoc Gamer and Footface both out on second runs already. Neither had a particularly good first run. I mean, Havoc Gamer didn't have a good one, and Footface wasn't able to set one at all. But as they both go around the final corner, Footface is just... Well, they both go around on their outlaps. Havoc Gamer getting out of the way for Frosted Cheese. I guess unsure if he's on a lap or not. But Footface comes around the final corner and begins his, or hopefully first completed lap of the session. As he takes us in towards the first corner, there's a few McLarens not far ahead of him. Needs to hope they get out of the way, which at least one of them has done nicely. Believe that was no, that was Ward. Jay-Z is also off the track to get out the way of the Ferrari, who's taking his way through that first sector. A little bit on the curb there, cost him a little bit of time, as he just slightly had a drift on that curb. But then, other than that, it's been a pretty clean lap. It's obviously not the fastest, that we'll see, but I think he's not aiming for that. He's just aiming to keep it within the white lines, get a time on the board at least, and then see where he can be. So around turn 11 he goes, and then it's to the right of 12. Into 13, and then into 14 goes Footface before he gets back on the power, and in towards 130 yard turn 15. And it's a 1:10.8 after the first two sectors. And that is pretty decent pace. Possibly could see him to around the top 5 if he gets that. If he gets this final chicane correctly, which he does seem to have done. And he comes up to the line now. What will it be? It's P3 for Footface with a 127.5. Fresh's first time. Really not the strongest, as he's dropped down to P5 with it. But then with track improvements as well, Footface's time will have been slightly enhanced. Havoc Gamer invalidated both of his runs. And he's invalidated again. He's going to hope he's got the fuel required to go again. Because if not, he's going to be in 8th at best. But McLaren have recently started a run, but it's Dom that's coming in towards the final corner. He's about 2 100ths up on his time at the moment before he goes into the final corner. Takes us to the left, gets back on the power again towards the right of the final corner, and up to the line he goes. It's a minor improvement, but it's no positions found for the Williams. He's going to be P4 at best. Fresh, Xavi and Mr. Business are all starting runs at the exact same time. Or, not exact same time, but they're all in a very similar part of the racetrack. Jay-Z, a second and a half up on his previous best, would see him to around a 27.7, I believe that would be. So that's around where Dom and Fresh are at the moment. Mr. Business is disconnected, and that will not be pole position from him, as he is sent back to the garage, and he will not be improving. 1.2 seconds found from Jay-Z puts him into P7. War around the final corner. He is down on his time at the moment. He can start another run, but I'm not sure if he'll be able to finish it in a decent time. Havoc Gamer is not improving, having invalidated his time. He's out. He's not going to improve it. Frosted Cheese is the same. Didn't get the chance to start a run. Jamie Cash going very slowly. He's going to be 6th at best. So I think it's all down to Fresh and Javi. Javi's going very slowly, so he's not going to be improving either. Fresh is the only driver who's setting this final runs here. As he goes through Spoon Cuff, he's in a prime position to take pole position at the moment, but he does need to find close to a second. So he takes us in towards 130. What sort of times will we be seeing? He's only 7 tenths up, which won't be enough at the moment to beat Xavi. He needs a further 2 tenths, or 10th and a bit, through this final chicane. He gets back on the power. Round the final corner he goes. Does he quite have enough? And he does, by a fraction of a second, about half a second was what he could find, and it was enough to take pole position. And Fresh is starting on pole with Javi alongside him, who's... Okay, that's interesting. And followed by Mr. Business, Footface, then Dom, Jamie Cash, Jay-Z. Someone just posted an improvement at the very end. That was War, who got himself up into P9. So Havoc Gamer starting down in P10. Which is a shame for him after... it was a great showing in Q1 and 2. But he just couldn't keep it. Oh, he just couldn't... couldn't do it well enough when it counted. And it's down in P10 for him. But on a more positive note, Fresh pulling out the lap when it mattered right at the very end to take pole position by 61 thousandths of a second, followed by Xavi, followed by Mr. Business, Footface, Dom, Jamie Cash, Jay-Z, Frosted Cheese, War, and then Havoc Gamer starting P10. Oh, that's true. He probably won't be able to. Yeah. That could be quite a problem. So I'm sure you can hear my fan. I'm just keeping it on for the pre-race bit before I turn it off for the actual race. Although you probably actually won't be able to hear it during the actual race. So maybe I'll keep it on. And if I... let me just see, like, audio levels. You might not be able to hear it during the race, I don't know. Oh, you can still do a start. Okay. Yeah, but he probably won't be able to change his strategy. So he's starting on whatever tyres the game wants him to start on, which appears to be the mediums. Yeah, there's just a load of changes to these tyres. Looking down at the moment, it's going with the mediums, unless he decides to change. Believe it or not, we've not readied up early. An XLR Tier 2 race, without an early ready up. Is it truly still an XLR Tier 2 race? Well, that being said, we didn't have one last week either. People were learning. Just a minute to go, and then we can get ourselves racing in Suzuka. Right, here we go. And Fresh gets the formation lap underway from the race lead. And then we wait to see what tyres all of the drivers will be starting on. Now, Mr. Biss is not in his car for the race start. But the two on the front row is Fresh and Shabby, both going with that hard compound tyre. And then they're followed by Mr. Business on the mediums, who will not be in control of his car for the race start. Or at least from the looks of it, at the moment he won't. And then they're followed by Footface on the hard tyres. And then it's Dom who's on the mediums. Jamie Cash also on the mediums. Jay-Z also on the mediums. Then they're also followed by Frosted Cheese, who is also on the mediums. War going on for the hards. Havoc Gamer, Cliffy Clive and Perkins all going mediums. Rolling Dice and EJ going with the softs. Great Pup mediums. Anzac Rex softs. Heart on the hards. Max softs. Mr. Cactus hards. And Dan, starting from 20th, is on the mediums. It's a tall order for Dan today, but he could still pull it off. He's going to have to overtake everyone in the field, but then he might still be able to taste victory if he plays his cards right and gets the strategy right. And the game reckons it's either soft medium or soft hard around this circuit. I think a soft medium is quite unlikely. Possibly, as Mr. Business has fallen a long way down the order. Not quite sure what's happened there. There's Jay-Z's in the gravel as well. Frosted Cheese is warming up his tires. How far down has Mr. Business fallen? There he is. But once they all come around this final corner, it is going to be 27 laps of Suzuka to decide the race winner again. The two Alfa Romeos appear to have collided on the formation lap. Perkins missed a grid spot as well. But we just wait for the lights. Here we go. The Japanese Grand Prix. And it's lights out, and away we go. And it seems to have been a pretty decent start from Fresh, who does lead them away in towards the first corner. Dan making good starts as well on the inside. Fresh leads them away from Xavi, and Mr. Business on the outside, getting forward a little bit onto the curb there. But he does remain in P3. Falling down the order is Jamie Cash, plummeting like a stone, having made some contact by the looks of things through that first corner. But Fresh has got them away cleanly from Xavi and from Mr. Business, followed by Footface and Dom. So they're all maintaining position at the sharp end. But then Jay-Z, Frosted Cheese, everyone downwards is making up places as Rolling Dice has also gone off through the S's. So has Hearts, but they were both quite far down the field as well. Daz made a pretty good start to get himself up into P15, having started down in 20th. Is he going to go for the lunge on Great Pup? Yes, he does, down the inside. And Dan moves himself up into 14th. And from last, he's already made up 6 places by the end of the first lap. As EJ gets himself ahead of War. War goes very wide and off the track at Spoon. And he loses out to Anzac Rex as well. EJ just sitting in an Alpine sandwich at the moment, with Perkins and Anzac Rex surrounding him. It's a lunge from Footface into the final chicane. He thought about it, didn't go for it. As going off there, I think it was Frosted Cheese getting involved in some form. And Hammer Gamer's also off the track, and that brings Dan all the way up to P13 by the end of the first lap. He might have the chance to go here on Frosted Cheese as well. Does he go to the inside? It's a bit of a late move from the Ferrari. Squeezes him all the way to the inside. Dan gets left just about enough space though, and he finds a way down the inside. They're still going to be side by side into turn 3, but Frosted Cheese has to back out. Dan has moved himself all the way up into 12th by the beginning of lap 2. And the impossible, or the seemingly impossible, is starting to seem quite possible. And he's made up 8 places in the span of a lap and a bit. And if he keeps up that pace, he could be at the front with it by the end of lap 3. But obviously he won't go that quickly up the order. But you never quite can tell. I mean, according to the game, he's only a handful of seconds behind the race leader Fresh. As wide goes Xavi, and through goes Mr. Business into second place. He is having to make use of those medium compound tyres. He probably didn't want to start on them, but that's what the game decided, so that's what he's having to deal with. There's a little bit of battling further back, but I don't think any moves are being made. As Dom's gone for the move on Footface, has gone around the outside through the final corner. Jay-Z also making the move on the Ferrari driver. Here goes Mr. Business on Fresh. Is he close enough? But no, he's not. Perkins also going through on Footface, who's had something has really affected his run through that final corner. But I'm not sure what. Dan, just up the hill at the moment, is on the back of Cliff D. Clive, but he can't get his way through. So now, Fresh lead from Mr. Business going round is Mr. Cactus, who's out a little spin through the first sector, but I think he's kept it in a straight line, so it's unlikely we'll see a safety car for that. Dan, does he lunge one to the inside? Yes, he does on Cliff D. Clive. And he moves himself up into 11th place. And already, on lap 3, he's made up 9 positions. And now, he sets his sights to War. Perkins gets past Jay-Z on the inside into Spoon Curve. And this is not the most common overtaking opportunity on the circuit. But she's made it work and moved up into that 5th place. Is Fresh far enough in the lead this time? Mr. Business is going to get the DRS into towards the first corner. And I don't think Fresh is going to be able to fight it this time around. As here he goes with his DRS and the slipstream, deploying some battery as well. And around the outside goes Mr. Business, who takes the race lead away from Fresh on lap 4. And now he's just going to hope he can pull away, run away a bit. Dan has gone down the inside into turn 1, and he moves up into 10th place. He's getting a lot closer to that front end. Clifty Clive also getting his way through on War. Danny's only 6 seconds behind the race lead, which all things considered is not that significant. And then once pit stops come into play, potentially a safety car thrown into the mix, Dan could really be right there. It's not the sort of track where you think overtaking's easy, but we've seen drivers go from the back to the front here before, and we may be seeing another one today. Xavi closing in on his fellow countryman, his fellow Dutchman of Fresh, or part Dutchman. I wanted to look at that. But I think Mr. Business will have just about broken that DRS as they go into the final chicane. And what that means is that Fresh is going to be very vulnerable to Xavi. Mr. Business is just going to try and run away with those medium compound tyres. The yellow wall tyres will definitely be the fastest at the moment. Fastest lap to boot. But here comes Xavi on Fresh. He goes to the outside. They're not battling each other too much into the corner, as that would only cost them both time. Here goes Dan on the outside of Anzac Rex, and he makes that move work into the first corner, and that's him up into 9th place. Dan making up these positions incredibly rapidly at the moment. But he's got to close down on EJ, who does have those soft tyres. But Dan is making it look almost easy through that first sector. Xavi has closed in to that 1 second margin that Mr. Business had, but the mechanical grip difference of those medium tyres may just be too powerful to be broken by that DRS that he had into the first corner and the ERS that he does appear to have been deploying. You said about that gap from Dan to EJ, he's halved it in the span of about a sector. He has halved that gap in such little time as EJ goes wide again, and that is just gonna, I think Dan's gonna start setting up that move about now. He's gonna hope that EJ doesn't fight him too hard. He doesn't have that much battery to fight him with anyway. And then Dan with the DRS should be comfortable to get past EJ, but we'll just have to wait and see. Xavi does not get the DRS again, and Fresh dropping back from the Red Bull. Here goes Dan again. He gets the DRS, and I think it's going to be basically the same move as the last few laps, and he's carving his way through the field down the inside, and he moves himself up into 8th place from the back of the grid to 8th by lap 6. Mr. Business, he's just extending his advantage out front, and Xavi is just not able to close in as much as he needs. Dan is now going to be chasing after Jay-Z, who's also about 1.6 seconds ahead of him. But it's going to be a bit more difficult this time around, because Jay-Z is also in that DRS of Footface. Dan is certainly closing in, but he's going to need to be a lot closer than on previous overtakes if he wants to get past Jay-Z, as that DRS advantage will be nullified by the Ferrari Footface ahead of him. But so far, it's gone almost perfectly for the for the Williams driver. Xavi is not leading the race. Mr. Business out front. I'm sure he'd prefer it if Fresh was ahead of the Red Bull. As here goes Perkins on Dom. They're going to be side by side into the final corner. Dom's had a really compromised exit. And here goes Perkins as well around the final corner. But all of this had just allowed Footface to close into this battle. And now he's going to get the DRS as well. So it's going to be a real DRS train that Dan has to work his way through. As Fresh goes around the outside of Xavi into in place. Perkins does pretty much the same to Dom, but she gets on the curb on the exit and slides, losing out on the position. And Dan's lost quite a bit of time to Jay-Z on the straight. That's just down to not getting the DRS, I suppose. But he's got to gain an awful lot, because he needs to catch this DRS train. He needs to catch the train, or otherwise he's not going to be able to get past any of them, because they're all just sitting in the DRS of the car in front. But I'll tell you what, he is only a handful of seconds away from this lead pack. As Perkins and Dom side by side now, as they went through the hairpin, they're going to be still side by side in towards Spoon Curb. Perkins seems to be just about ahead. I think Dom's going to have to back out of that one. Yeah, they try to turn in, but there's a little bit of contact, and that pushes him wide. And now he's side by side with Footface for a fifth. And I'll tell you what, that battle does seem to have helped Dan. But it might not do the job for him, as he's still 1.3 seconds behind. He's still 1.3 seconds behind. He's now 1.4 seconds behind. So again, he's just going to miss out on the DRS train. And again, he's going to lose a lot of time. Footface has had an awful exit this time around, though, as they come around the final corner. Yeah, Dan doesn't have the DRS, but he's still very close. Dom moves ahead of Perkins into 4th place. There's a little bit of contact between the two of them, I think, as they just kind of tucked in behind each other into the first corner. But Dan has now caught this train. And that's honestly the most important priority for him at the moment. Now he's in the train, he needs to work his way through it. And he can't afford to fight too hard that he loses the DRS of the car in front. But at the same time, he can't be too passive that he gets stuck in this train, because that would honestly be disastrous for his race. Just going a little bit deep under braking. That was EJ. I was slightly scared he was going to go clattering into the back of the Williams, but thankfully he managed to keep it under control and no contact was made. Through Spoon Curve again, but Dan, he's just not going to be close enough. He might be just about close enough if there's a battle in front of him, if he wants to get a move down the straight. But I think in any other situation, he's not going to be close enough. He's dropped back to 7/10. I think he's running much higher wings than these cars around him. So they all just go on to this pit straight. Xavi's not close enough to go for a move on Fresh. Are we going to see any movement in this train at all? I don't think we are. They're all just going to stay as they were when they went onto the straight. Going a little bit deep there was Perkins, but I don't think Footface is going to be close enough to capitalise on that. And Dan, he's just very close to the back of Jay-Z. I'm sure he's getting stupidly frustrated in this position that he is. And he's just not able to work his way through this train. Because he knows he's faster. He wants to catch up to Xavi, Fresh, and Mr. Business. But he's not going to be able to if he just gets stuck in a train like this one. He needs to position his car correctly. And he just needs to make whatever he gets the chance to do. He just needs to make it work. Max picks up a 3-second time penalty for multiple warnings, but he's down in P17, so that's not going to affect this race too much. And again, the gaps are all just staying pretty similar as they all go down onto the straight. Is Footface going to go for a lunge down the inside? It looks like he was planning it, but didn't go for it in the end. They go around the final corner again, but I think again we're going to see the same. No movement between any of them. Perkins, is she close enough this time? No, don't think she is. Just taking us through the first corner. Nothing is seeming to change just yet. I mean, we hope for racing, we hope for change, but there's just nothing going on at the moment. Furtface does seem to be in a position where his hards are faster than those mediums off the cars around him. Dan almost looked like he was going to go for a move on Jay-Z into the first Egner, but he wasn't close enough. Possibly ascend into the hairpin could be in order from him. He's close, but he's not close enough to go for the move. Jay-Z goes a little bit deep into the corner though, and Dan might have just set him up perfectly, but he doesn't have the run required to make the move down the straight. Jay-Z got no battery to deploy. Where will Dan be able to make a move is the question, because Jay-Z certainly appears to be faster on the straights. And then through the corners, so there's not really anywhere to overtake. Is he going to go for it into the final chicane? On the outside into 130R. Can he squeeze his way through? He goes. There's a little bit of contact and Dan goes off the circuit. Jay-Z doesn't get the DRS this time around, and that might just be what saves Dan, but it was a really poor exit through the final corner from the Williams. Jay-Z has no DRS. Dan does have that rear wing flap open, but I don't think he's going to be close enough after the exit he got. And he's just not close enough. It looked like that was the lap. It felt like that was the lap, but he just didn't have the opportunity. That was the chance for Dan. That really was. But he just didn't get the exit through the final corner. And that is what cost him. On board with him now. Is he close enough to go for any move? Like, he's just... You can almost sense the frustration in his driving. The way he's just getting more and more wheel spin through the corners. Just getting more... Like, less and less patient on the throttle. He just wants to make these moves, but he doesn't have any position to do so. Although possibly if Jay-Z does... No, Jay-Z has got back into that DRS. He's got back into that 1 second window. Although he might fall short, as the gap is very close. It's hanging in the balance here. Dan might actually have it this time around as Anzac Rex goes off the track at Spoon, and that is a safety car. Dan really needed that previous attempt. Anzac Rex has gone off the track through Spoon. He's hit the inside wall, and they're all into the pit lane. All of them. They've got no other choice, really. They all have to pit. Yeah, they're all having to pit. Dan's going to have to double stack. Crucially though, although so is EJ, so it shouldn't influence the positions too greatly. But Dan's going to be held up a bit more than EJ was, but they all filter out. Mr. Business leads from Fresh and Javi. His gap's gone down the drain though. Dom is in P4 still, followed by Perkins, Footface, Jay-Z, Dan, EJ, and Clifty Clive now into P10. No position change through the pit stops. Yeah, crucially, after all of that, Mr. Business has overtaken the safety car. And he's been disqualified from the session. He overtook the safety car. And now, that is his title hopes completely dashed. I think he needed to outscore Javi today if he wanted to. If he wanted to keep in the championship fight. He was 20 points behind before the weekend, so Javi just needs 6 points. He needs 6 points today to knock Mr. Business out of the title fight. That's all he needs. So even more than before, it's completely now going to be Dan versus Xavi for the remainder of this race. And Fresh is going to be there. But at the moment, he's not going to be... At the moment, it's not going to be enough from Xavi. So Dan at the moment is down in P7. I think Mr. Business had the fastest lap. I'm not sure. He did, yeah. Mr. Business had the fastest lap. So at the moment, there's no fastest lap point. So at the moment, Xavi is outscoring Dan by 12 points. To win the title today, he needs to outscore him by... So the gap's 5 points. He needs to outscore him by 21 today. No, 22 today. Yeah, so at the moment, the title is going to be going to the final race, which Xavi may or may not attend. Havoc Gamers just picked up a warning, or a track limits penalty, for multiple warnings under the safety car, which is not ideal. But so after all of that, Mr. Business's great first stint is gonna come to nothing. And so now it's Fresh that leads from Xavi, both on the medium compound. Footface in P5 at the moment is in a strong position, also on the mediums, although those are going to drop off faster than the hards of the guys around him. Guys and girls. I need to be inclusive. So Mr. Business paused the game. So he paused the game to charge his headset, and in doing so, the AI overtook, or his AI overtook the safety car, which ended up with him being disqualified. Which definitely puts the title and the race firmly in the hands of Xavi and Dan. Probably shouldn't, but I think the safety car's going to be in at the end of this lap. Indeed it is. So 13 laps to go once they cross the line. 13 laps for Dan to try and gain 6 positions, I think. Or possibly 7 positions, I'm not sure. So he moved up into 7th following that disqualification of Mr. Business. But now, Fresh bolts them away round the final corner. But Xavi's kept perfectly with him. They're going to go possibly wheel to wheel into the first corner. Fresh covered the inside. Xavi, he tried to go around the outside, but he can't get a wheel alongside. Dan has not had has not had the greatest of restarts relative to Jay-Z. Although, actually, that being said, he is still rather close to the McLaren driver. Is he going to get the chance to just stick a wheel up the inside, possibly around the outside, if he can find the position to do so? Here he goes. Is he going to go for it into the first second? No, he's not. He can't get himself alongside. And the safety car's deployed again, as Mr. Cactus has gone off the track and lost his front wing. But all that's going to do, really, is just wind down the clock. So there's less time for Dan to make a move. Less time for Xavi and Fresh to try and hold on out front. Will we see anyone coming back into the pit lane, is the question. So are we going to see these guys into the pit lane? Is the question. So the front I think they're all staying out. Yeah, they're all staying out. No one's risking it. Right, so when the safety car comes in, it could possibly be 10 laps to go. Right, how long do we have remaining of this safety car period then? Can't be too long. Hearts has disconnected. Let me sort him out with an invite. There we go. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. Right, so most likely safety car's going to be in at the end of this lap. And then it's going to be, what, 10 racing laps. Went from 13 down to 10. The clock is running away fast. And Dan really has to work his way through the field now. I think we'll probably see the safety car in. Oh yeah, I think I missed the thing. Yep, safety car is indeed in. The lights have gone green on the safety car. The message will only just come through from race control apparently, but the lights went green a while ago. And the safety car will be in at the end of this lap. Dan will hope he gets a better restart this time than last. Fresh takes us through the final chicane. Doesn't go for it yet, goes for it now, and accelerates away. He's got caught Xavi mostly off guard here as they all go around the final corner. Dan is not very close to the back of Jay-Z. Again, I think he's just not got the good enough restart. EJ closing in on him won't be close enough to go for any move. Fresh leads them away from Xavi and Dom. Perkins sitting in P4 ready to capitalise if anything goes on with that front three. And Dom's keeping up with Xavi for the time being at least, as he gets a little bit of a drift through the corner. And EJ's gone himself past Dan. Dan down to 8th place is not where he wants to be. If Xavi wins now with Dan in this position, he will take the championship over the Williams driver with a race to go. It's still possible. All things are still possible. But Dan knows he needs to get a move on. He needs to get his way up the field. I don't think Fresh is just going to give the win away, but Xavi's will be prepared to fight him for it. As they all go through Spoon Curve. And he's just got to hope. And Dan's just got to hope that his teammate Dom can do something to take some points away from Xavi. He's closing in with the slipstream, but he's not going to be close enough, at least for the time being. Dan has got to get himself back ahead of EJ before too long. Jamie Cash sends it to the inside, makes contact with EJ. Dan gets through into 7th place again, and that is almost exactly what Dan would have wanted, as it gets him through, up a position. It did cost him time, but he is up into 7th place. Xavi goes round the outside of Fresh into the race lead, but Dan's got himself into that position where the championship should go down to the final race, if I've done my calculations correctly. I believe the swing will only be 19 points when he needs at least 21 to win the title today. But that will mean Dan needs a near perfect weekend in Monza if he wants to win the title. But Jay-Z has dropped out of the DRS of Footface, so another position could be on the cards here. As EJ's disconnected from the session, Hart has gone off the track somewhere on that circuit. That's at the first Degner. Now the second Degner, Hart has gone into the wall, facing the wrong way, but there's no safety car for that. No safety car for that incident. Hart's facing the wrong way in the barriers, but Dan is on the back of Jay-Z, and these are the moves he needs to make. This is the move he has to make if he wants any chance. He's going incredibly rapidly at the moment. He's going to get the... He might not get the DRS just yet, as it probably isn't activated, but he's going to get a better exit, as Jay-Z was all over the place through that final corner, but he's had his run compromised due to the strategic placement of the McLaren. Dan switches to the inside, he gets left very little space, squeezed to the pit wall, he's going to hang in there on the inside, they go side by side, there's a little bit of wing-wagging between the two of them, and that's Jay-Z spinning the wrong way. And that might just ruin Dan's chances again. He's now stuck behind Jamie Cash, who does have a time penalty, but he wants to get a move on past the Mercedes. I need to deliver an invite quickly. It interrupts the flow so much. Fred and Jamie's very close to each other as well. Or at least on my screen there wasn't firm contact. It was all just ghosted, or seemingly ghosted. between the two of them. I don't know if they felt the same, or if Dan felt the same. But he's now just stuck behind Jamie Cash. He's got Clifty Clive behind him, who probably won't sniff at a chance for a P6, P7, depending on how bounties turn out. Here goes Dan. He won't be close enough to go for it into the last chicane, or will he? He's going to go to the outside into 130R. Clifty Clive is there in the background in case something goes on. Dan goes around the outside of Jamie Cash, who made contact with the house car, and he's got spun around at 130R. It's always the danger when you go for an overtake there. That's an incident like that will happen. But Dan moves himself up into 6th place. He's got Clifty Clive in his DRS. Will the house car be close enough to go for the move? Dan defends the inside. Clive might just go all the way around the outside of the Williams, but he doesn't have the road to do so. And he goes off the track. Dan stays in P6. But he does have a risk of a penalty for that incident with Jay-Z, depending on how it's interpreted by the stewards. And if I was him, I'd make sure I get that gap of at least 5 seconds, just to be safe. And he is certainly opening that gap out to Clifty Clive. He's going to hope that somewhere in all of that, they get into a fight, start losing each other time. As there's a yellow flag and there's another safety car. And I think Mr. Cactus might have gone off again. We've got, and yes he has, he's lost his wing again. We've got a 3rd safety car in this race. If Dan is to receive a time penalty, then for that incident, if he is deemed at fault for that incident, then that will cost him so much. As now the entire field is going to be bunched together. Lots of drivers choosing to pit. Dan does not. So it's going to be a Williams 1-2 on the road. I think the plan down at Williams is to invert the cars, then have Dom just park it on the apexes. Don't let anyone through. So they've got the track position. Xavi is down in 6th. Dan definitely is going to want to clear his teammate. When the safety car comes in, there's going to be about 2 laps of racing. I think the plan is going to be to invert the cars quickly, and then Dom just needs to hold everyone up as much as he possibly can, as Mr. Cactus retires from the session. So the top 5 have stayed out. Everyone from 6th and below all came into the pit lane for brand new soft tyres. But if Dan can just... as slowly on the track there as Max in the Alfa Romeo, but how long do we have? The question, how long do we have after the safety car goes in? How long? I hope, I'm sure the Williams boys will hope that they've got the messages across to each other. Safety car's in this lap. We have 4 laps of racing. Shabby down in 6th, needs to make his way through the field fast. But as Dan has proven, it's not always easy. So, the safety car restart. Dom gets us underway, and we go back to green flag racing. Clifty Clive has been left pretty much in the dust by Dan, who's already on the back of his teammate. He's gaining. Is he going to go for the move on his teammate? The two Williams are going to go side by side in the first corner. Dom holds him off. Dan goes squeezing down the inside. They make contact in the two Williams cars. Dan moves up into the race lead. Dom and Clive going to be side by side. Now Dom, I think he just needs to hold off the cars behind as much as he can. Clive goes into the ground, which invites rolling dice into P3. Xavi's got his way into P4 as all that's going on. And here he goes on rolling dice. He goes off the track, goes very, very wide, and through goes the Red Bull driver. And now Dom really just needs to park that Williams car as much as he can. Xavi sends it down the inside. They make a little bit of contact at the apex, but there's nothing Dom can do to fight that one. And Xavi's gone for it already. He's got 9/10 is the gap to Dan, and I think he's going to be able to gain that. He's on fresh tyres. He's on fresh softs. And Dan on his 12-lap-old hard probably just won't be able to fight that. Dom goes wide, having gone side by side with Fresh into Spoon. Perkins gaining here on the Williams as well. He's not been able to hold up the cars behind as much as Dan would have hoped. There's contact between the two of them. Dom squeezes Perkins into the wall. They make contact. That's a virtual safety car, just as the gaps were starting to close. And I think Dan already has realised that he might have made the wrong call. He's only half a second out front. Possibly less, depending on the deltas. And then if he does get a penalty for that incident, then it could be out of the points. VSC restarts can be difficult on this game, with some incredibly strict drive-through penalties that we've seen in the past. And we can't tell when it goes green. We just have to wait and just react once we see it. Will Dan be able to hold off Xavi for the next 3 laps? Or possibly 2.5? When does the VSC go green? It goes green now. They both kept it under the delta. I think Dan has gained a little bit of a time compared to Xavi on that VSC restart versus what the gap was before. Here he goes already. The Red Bull is so much quicker. He's going to go to the outside in towards Spoon Curve, and Dan can do nothing to fight that. And through goes Xavi into the race lead. And that is perfectly how he imagined this stint would go. And he's just got himself back up into the race lead. And Fresh is going to hope he can do the same. And he's gaining on Dan, but he's not going to be gaining quite enough to go for it. Here he goes on the outside, into the final chicane. Dan's going to fight him on the inside. There's a little bit of contact between the two of them, but Fresh squeezes his way through as well. Dan just needs to keep pushing, keep going for as long as he can. Stay close to these guys. Stay as close as he can. Dom's dropped down the order, has had an incident at the chicane. And he's out of the session as well. But Dan, he's now 1.4 seconds behind the leader. If he picks up a time penalty, that will drop him down to P5, possibly only P4. Depending on those time penalties of the other drivers. Max picks up another 3-second time penalty. That pretty much solidifies him as being unable to finish ahead of Dan. regardless of time penalties going his way. Dan's just losing time. But honestly, he's losing time, but it's not too drastic in the grand scheme of things. So with a 5-second time penalty at the moment would put him 7.9 seconds behind the leader. Jay-Z would be on 8.5. So at the moment Dan is still on for P4. Here he goes. He's actually still on the back of Frosted Cheese, on the back of Fresh, who's probably attempting to back him up to help Xavi in this race, who takes the fastest lap as well. Here goes Dan, though. He's gaining on Fresh. He goes to the outside. Fresh tries to fight him, but he can't. And Dan moves back up into second place on the road. The fastest lap has been stolen away though, so Xavi at the moment is not going to finish with that bonus point, and with the ERS values that he has, he might not get it at all. 3.2 seconds is the gap from Dan to Xavi. He's not going to be able to gain that, but he might be able to not lose out too drastically, even with a time penalty. I think Fresh is just trying to hold him up and just gain those places. And Dan is going to hold him off in towards Spoon Curve, but I don't know if he's going to have enough into that final corner. Fresh has a little bit more ERS to use, and likely lower wings as well. They're going to go into 130R for the final time. Fresh goes to the inside. Dan can't fight it. He loses out to Fresh pretty much on the line. Is he going to have the chance to just send it down the inside? He goes to the outside. Fresh goes a little bit deep, but I don't think it's going to be there for him. And around the final corner goes Xavi, who wins in Japan. Fresh comes on second, followed by Dan. Footface P4, Jay-Z P5, Max is going to come home P6, but with a time penalty that will likely demote him further. Wall gets P6, Rolling Dice P7, EJ P8, Frosted Cheese P9, Clifty Clive P10, Max finished P11 after time penalties, 12th for Havoc Gamer, 13th for Great Pup, and 14th for Perkins. So, Xavi has come out victorious in Suzuka, followed by Fresh, and Dan from the back of the grid coming home P3, Footface P4, Jay-Z P5, and then it's War, Rolling Dice, EJ, Frosted Cheese, Clifty Clive, Max, Havoc Gamer, Perkins, and Great Pup, the last of the finishers. Then not finishing is Dom, Mr. Cactus, Jammy Cash, Hearts, and Zach Rex, and Mr. Business. And I don't think Dan will end up getting a penalty for that. He is going to be driver of the day as well. I mean, it is the obvious choice from 20th to 3rd. But that was quite the chaotic Japanese Grand Prix in the end. Thank you for everyone watching the stream, and we'll see you tomorrow night for possibly an even more chaotic Monaco Grand Prix.